Here we go, another episode of Audio Signals podcast. This is Marco Ciappelli, and we are on ITSPmagazine. As you know, Audio Signals is all about stories, storytelling, and storytellers. And I get curious, and I want to know what is behind the book most of the time. What is the author's story, and how they decided to write what they write, or if we talk about photography or painting, to produce the art that they decide to produce. Because, unlike artificial intelligence, we do have a life, and and that's what usually drive us. But this is not what we're going to talk about today. What we're going to talk about today is a book, and it's called Conspiracy Ignited, and the author is here with me, Raymond Paul Johnson. I think it goes by Ray. If you're watching the video, that's how I sign in on the recording platform. So welcome to the show, Ray.
Well, thank you for having me, Marco. Looking forward to it.
Yep, and a disclaimer: when I went to the website, Raymond's website, I saw something very familiar and very dear to me, which is the Los Angeles South Bay. So that's where I lived for a long time. I'm still in LA, even if not at this particular moment. And so maybe we'll talk a little bit about that too, just to remind me how beautiful it is down there. But let's go with the first question. Who is Ray? That's pretty easy, right?
Well, I should know, I guess. Yeah, it's pretty easy. Who is Ray? At the moment, Ray is a novelist, kind of the last thing I've tried in a long list of things. I don't know how far back you want to go, but when I was in high school, I had a history teacher. I even remember her name, Ms. Kraganoff. And I found out I was going to NYU, and she rushed over. She was very excited. And then she said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "My plan is to go to NYU, get an engineering degree, join the Air Force, and become a jet pilot." And I was waiting for some type of reaction, and she just burst out laughing. And she said, she goes, "Ray, you're a writer, you're a lawyer, but you're not going to be an engineer or a pilot, not very long." And that was prophetic. I was both very long, but it was prophetic in the sense that later, after being a pilot in the Air Force, combat pilot, being an engineer on the space shuttle program, I went ahead and went to law school. I've got an understanding wife, a very understanding wife. And so we packed up. I went to law school, and I knew right away what I wanted to be, which was a trial lawyer. There was no other question about that in my mind. And we also wanted to return to LA because I took law school at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. And the deal was my wife would say, okay, my daughter would be okay, as long as when we were finished, we returned to LA. And that's what we did. And rest is kind of history. I ended up starting my own law firm, emphasizing product liability work and aviation law all over the country. And then along came COVID. I'm giving you the short version here, Marco. Along came COVID, and I saw it as my opportunity to do what really was lingering on my head, which was to write a novel, write a few novels, maybe a lot of novels, I don't know. But I did it. I closed my practice essentially, although I still consult on cases all over the country. But and I am a part-time instructor at the University of Southern California, teaching classes in law, product liability, aviation law, and aviation safety. But most of my time I spend these days writing novels, and I've written one, which we'll talk about in a bit, Conspiracy Ignited. I'm halfway through my second, which I won't call it a sequel. It's part of a series. And the protagonist, the hero, is a fella named Eric Ridge, and he will show up in the second book if he doesn't die in the first. No,
We don't know.
I had to make sure. I can't tell too much about the ending, but
Exactly. Well, you know, there are some authors very famous for killing their characters, and so be careful. Don't kill your character if you want to write another book about. Although you could, change time and change. It doesn't have to be chronologically speaking a sequel. Or
a prequel, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Prequel, exactly. Like Yellowstone. Right? They've done that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating because as I was looking at your website and I look at the book, it starts with a CIA combat pilot turned lawyer, a secret society taking over American court, and I'm like, all right, this sounds like a little bit of what you described in terms of your career. So. I think we can start with the first question about the book. How much of this is reality, is your story, and how much is fiction?
I'll back up just a little bit.
Do that.
I'm a Hemingway guy. I mean, I am a Hemingway writer. Short sentences, short paragraphs, short chapters, and get to the point and do your best at all times, and then rewrite. That's what I do, and that's important. Hemingway also said, "Write what you know." Mm-hmm. Write what you know, and that sounded great to me because the authors that I've read over the years are just that. Some of my favorites, James Lee Burke. I think he's the master of crime fiction. He's basically a poet that writes prose. Michael Connelly. I've read every book he's read. I've met him. Terrific guy. Clive Cussler. He did his books in real life, as you might know. I think his son is following in that tradition now. So it was easy. I said, you know what? Most of the major things that happen in this book are going to be real in the sense that they're going to be composites of things that happened to me. And I was basically a witness to every scene. But of course, each scene also is fictionalized. I mean, it has to be in order to do what I set out to do, which was to entertain. That's what I wanted to do with the book. And before we went on, I mentioned to you that I really loved your website because I looked at it and it just spoke to me. I mean, provoke thought, entertain, and perhaps inspire. Those could all be listed as my goals. So you did a great job of looking into me and putting it right out there.
Well, I think it needs to be everybody's, a parenthesis here. Like, I always talk about storytelling when you're teaching. If you're a science, somebody that works in science, you're teaching to your students. Nothing is as memorable as a good story. So,
Well, I try to do that in my teaching at USC, and I think the best professors and teachers I've ever had are the ones that do entertainment as they teach, because they keep people focused on them, and so that's exactly what I try to do, because I know I can be effective as a teacher if I entertain somewhat.
Yeah. And grasping people's attention and make it memorable. It's kind of like advertising in a way, right? So tell me a little bit more about the book. Like how, the Hemingway part, the style, the fact that you're familiar with the things that you're talking about. It sounds to me that there could be the good and the bad in that. Like where you draw the line between, okay, now I'm going to let it go with my imagination. And am I doing something bad to my to my real story. I don't know. I'm just throwing things there because or it's very well complementary what you do.
I find it complimentary. I mean, I guess you got to start with, to an extent, I totally agree with this. There are two types of writers, novel writers. One is called a plotter, Plotter. The other one's called a pantser, Pantser. And that comes from a plotter will plot out the story, sometimes from beginning to end. The famous plotters are James Patterson, for instance, plots everything out. Jeffrey Deaver, he plots everything out. And they do a great job. Then there's the other types, which are the pantser, which basically they fly by the seat of their pants. That's where the saying comes from. I'm a pantser. I'll always be a pantser, and I'll never not be a pantser. I start a scene. I don't know where it's going to end, let alone where the chapter's going to end. I didn't know where the book was going to end until I got to the end of the book. I let the characters drive me. Some famous writers like that. Well, the one that comes most to mind is Michael Connelly. He writes all his books as a pantser. Why do I do that? I do that because it makes writing enjoyable to me. If I have to plot something out and I know the ending and then I just have to fill in, to me, I'm not getting surprised. When I write, I'm surprised by every scene because I don't know how they're going to end. I don't. It's an amazing process that everybody should try. Some people won't like it. For me, it's the only way to write. And so to that's a long way of getting around to answer your question. I start out with something that happened in my life, and then I just let the characters take me. And it doesn't have to replicate what happened. In fact, it may replicate 2 or 3 things that happened and bring it together. Because again, my number one reason to write is to entertain. So that's most in my mind. But along the way, I do provoke thought, I think, and we could talk about that when you want to.
Yeah, well, let's do that. I'm kind of like you when you write. When I do the podcast, I'll go where it goes. So right. We just went there. Let's keep going.
Oh, okay. Then we're just going to roll right into it.
I got no notes. So
okay, neither do I actually.
We're pantser right now.
That's right. That's so true. By the way, I used to fly that way too. I mean, really? In the Air Force, you have to be very precise. But
right.
I was an instructor in jets and in combat planes, and what I wanted my students to be is folks that fly by the seat of their pants. Because when the instruments go down, when everything else is bad, all you got is yourself. You're feeling that airplane, you're feeling the sky, and that's the way I flew for 2,000 hours, 700 of which were combat. So, provoking thought's important too. And so when I do get to a scene and I start thinking about it, it's not just a factual scenario of things. It's, all right, I want to say something in here, but I don't want to lecture. Nobody likes to hear lectures. I want to say something through the characters. And, there's quite a few. This is a legal thriller, although it's interesting. In pre-release reviews, it's been called a legal thriller, a crime thriller, a action adventure thriller, and one reviewer called it a political thriller, which is interesting because I never thought of it as a political thriller, but it is what it is. So I wanted to start out as a legal thriller. That was the whole idea. The main character is, guess what, a lawyer who flies airplanes, right? And he uses them both together. In other words, when he goes on cases, when he goes investigating, when he does other things, 8 times out of 10, he'll rent an airplane and go do it, that sort of thing, up and down the West Coast. So I wanted another thing to happen. I wanted this to be about a real lawyer, a lawyer that actually practices, not a fictionalized lawyer who gets up and does a Perry Mason thing in a courtroom. I wanted somebody who's reading it to say, oh my God, that's how lawyers live. Now I get it. He goes to work. He has to have a meeting, even though he doesn't want to have a meeting, with all his associates and paralegals. They have to coordinate on the cases. They have to select cases. So hopefully in an entertaining way, what I did was I put the protagonist, Eric Ridge, right in his law firm. In fact, it's in Redondo Beach, talking about the South Bay. That's where his office is. Eric also sold his house because he's having some trouble with post-traumatic stress since he was a combat pilot. And his wife saw it. They sold his house. He rents an apartment, but it's right on the Queen's Necklace, looking up the beach around to Malibu. And he's happy there, sitting out on his balcony, looking and thinking about his cases. So I wanted to be real, but I also wanted to take up certain issues that real lawyers face. I'll give you a quick example if you want it.
Yeah.
Okay. What I call the silent conflict in the book. The silent conflict is a situation that exists in real life, and I highlight it in the book, trying to provoke thought. And what that is the conflict that an insurance defense lawyer has with his clients at times. And what I'm saying is, an insurance defense lawyer, when you go out and you use your insurance to have a lawyer to defend you or whatever, that lawyer isn't paid by you, the client. That lawyer is paid by the insurance company. And the insurance company is called the principal. So that lawyer has a principal and has a client and has an extreme duty, ethical duty to the client, but also has a duty, mainly a business duty, to the insurer. When the insurer asks the lawyer to do things that aren't in the best interest of the client, not in the best interest of the client, that lawyer is in a triangular relationship. And that creates more conflict. It's the same problem that medical doctors have who, a medical doctor gets paid by the insurance company, not the patient, but has the highest duty to the patient and a rather high duty to the insurance company. And as we all know, sometimes decisions are made in hospitals and even in doctors' offices that perhaps are dictated by the business relationship with the insurance company. For instance, my brother-in-law just had a triple bypass surgery, and he was told he has to leave the hospital 4 days after the triple bypass surgery, and go home. We took care of that problem, but that was what the doctor had to say. I'm sure the doctor didn't really want that to happen. The insurance company dictated it. So the silent conflict is in Conspiracy Ignited. It's in a real life situation, and it flows throughout the book. And hopefully people will read it and see both sides and all sides of the issue and provoke thought. So that's just an example.
That's interesting. It seems like it's a thriller because I'm sure there is a surprising final and whatever it is that, of course, you're not going to say. But what you just said make me think about other conversation that I had with other writer, which is that you need often to create a character that has his own story, kind of like a conflict within himself or herself, whatever the main character is, that kind of complement the story. So it's a story within a story. And I was reading some of the reviews, and some writers that did the review point out that there is that, CIA combat pilot, memory flashback from war moment or whatever he was doing and missions, but then also taking care of real life present now. So balancing, this whole thing?
Yeah, another way I tried to provoke thought in the book was the main character is suffering from post-traumatic stress from combat. The reason I did that, I'm a member of the American Legion, and they have a program, which is probably our number one program, which is Be the One. Be the One, that program has to do with vets helping vets. Vets helping military veterans who are suffering from PTSD and, more importantly, suicidal. Here's a fact. Well, it's not quite a fact. It's almost a fact. Every hour of every day, a military veteran commits suicide. A U.S. military veteran commits suicide. The actual number is 22 a day. That's a VA study and an American Legion study. So it's a real big problem because talk about losing really great people. We're losing them. And so I wanted to bring that in the book, and that too runs through the book. Again, not in a lecture sense, not even in the sense of telling facts. It's to provoke thought. It's how the characters respond because of the PTSD, how the other many things that affect poor Eric Ridge in this book, and he does have a lot of things come at him, are worse yet because of this post-traumatic stress that he has that heightens when other stress comes into play. So, that's another area I try to provoke thought in the book. I hope people like it. I hope they think about it. It's also part of Eric Ridge's arc, the character arc. He starts at a certain place when you first meet him in page 1, chapter 1, and he ends up in a different place at the end. And again, getting back to what you were saying, Marco, character arc is important. I mean, most of us, you can have a flat character arc. I almost gave away something, but I won't in the book. But you can have a flat character arc, and in a book, you can have some characters that have an arc where they improve, some go south on you, and others just stay flat. I show all of them in the book. I try to anyway.
Wow, it's very impressive to know that you do this in a thriller, which in my head needs to be somehow plot, but you actually do it as you go. So I'm very, very intrigued by the unexpected that maybe this way of writing will bring the reader.
Thrillers, the word on the street is thrillers are usually plot driven. In other words, mine is plot driven, but it's just equally character driven. Right. So when I go to a lot of writing conferences, and when I go and people start talking about, well, my story is a plot driven, my story is a character driven, I have trouble relating because I think like life, just like life, a good thriller novel has to be both. Otherwise, I don't know how you get the thrills. And I try to give everybody John Gilstrap is a very good friend of mine. He was a William & Mary graduate. And he always says, what I try to do with my thrillers is give people a ride. That's what and when he said that, it immediately hit home. I said, that's what I try to do. Every scene, I try to give them a ride. But certainly they get a ride in every chapter, that's for sure. And he goes, that's a thriller, no matter how you do it, So that was the goal anyway.
Yeah. What I want to take a couple of minutes before we start wrapping. Let's talk about storytelling, period. Like not just your book. I mean, you went into a lot of different things that you like, the way you operate, the way that others operate. And so I think it was very educational, honestly, for any reader. And I believe that everybody in a way or in another, is telling stories, right? I mean, even when you just meet somebody in the street, you're telling a story. You're telling your own story. You may even think about it or not, but that's what you do. But when you put it in writing, things change a little bit. So tell me something about the value, which is what you found on my website, and you say you agree with that, the value of storytelling in our society. I mean, it's a big question. I know we could have an entire episode on this, but kind of like the essence for you of the meaning of storytelling.
Well, I've been a trial lawyer for over 35 years.
You told a lot of stories.
I've told a lot of stories. And I don't mean fictional stories. I mean every single trial I put on. Most of my trials were 4 to 6 weeks in length. They're huge civil litigation trials all over the country, 16 different states I litigated in. And the one thing they all had in common, from my opening statement to the last thing I said before the jury went out, it was all part of a story that hopefully is a convincing story, and not a fictional story, hopefully a factual story. But, you know, there are facts. And one thing you learn as a trial lawyer is there is no black or white, there's only gray. And so it gives you a lot of room to be a storyteller. And by the way, the best defense lawyers, I mean, most of the defense lawyers I went to trial against are among the best. They're representing Boeing Company, they represent General Motors, all the big corporations, so they know what they're doing. And yet, I would say only 50% of them, the best 50%, were storytellers. That's how important it is. And I used to love it when I would be up against a big defense team and the main lawyer wasn't a storyteller, because I knew at the beginning of the case I had an advantage here. And vice versa. When they were a storyteller, I knew I'm going to have to go.
Then it's a battle of the band.
Right.
It's a battle of the storyteller.
Yes.
I can totally see that. I mean, you're moving the judge, you're moving the jury, you're moving, and you're not lying, but even the inflection, even the side of the story that you decide to give more highlight versus the other. I mean, it's very much where you can win or lose the case. Can you be a good lawyer and not being a good storyteller? Because you say you've gone for a big company where somebody was not a storyteller, but there must have been.
Well, you can be a good lawyer, but you're not going to be, in my opinion, a good trial lawyer. And you know, there's a big difference.
Yeah, got it.
You know, I was going to a Broadway play. It was Jersey Boys, actually, and I sat down in the theater like we all do, and the fellow next to me says, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, "I was a trial lawyer." And the guy, he looked at me. My wife was wondering what was going on. He looked at me, stood up straight, and he said, "Oh, you're a real lawyer." And I said, "What do you mean? I'm a real lawyer?" "Yeah, I'm a real lawyer." He goes, "I'm a real estate lawyer. I never get close to that stuff, but God, I wish I would." And, you know, this fellow was in his 60s. He'd been around and probably a great real estate lawyer. But he knew the difference. And the difference is trial lawyers are storytellers. It's true. You got to be able to put the whole production together so that it's not only... Well, so that it's believable and truthful.
You answered to my question in a very, in a way that makes people think, because, and here's how we're going to do it. So you mentioned you need to be, we talked before about educating, being a good teacher. You need to be a good storyteller because you make things memorable. Now you're saying to be a good trial lawyer, you need to be a good storyteller. I can think about a million other examples of how you need to be a good storyteller. I mean, I've done a lot of advertising and branding. We're telling stories all the time. You go get budget for your department, let's say cybersecurity. It's not just about data. You got to tell a good story. Why am I investing? Why the CEO is going to give you that budget, right? So my point is, even a kid that wants the new bicycle, you better have a good story for dad and mom so that they can they can say, wow, he really wants this bike.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. Storytelling. Well, I guess one could even say, you mentioned advertising. How about being a salesman?
Yeah.
I mean, how can you be a successful salesman without being a storyteller?
Absolutely.
I don't think you can be. And maybe in one sense, we're all salesmen. I mean, whether you're a trial lawyer, even pilots. I mean, we're salesmen because we want to go fly again. We want to do 2 turns, a trip turn that day with and fly different airplanes. And we got to go tell the colonel, this is best for you. Even though what I want to do is go fly supersonic that day.
Yeah.
You know, that's so.
And boy, you say you work on the space shuttle program. I've been lucky that I had at least 6 different astronauts that been on my show. Ellen Collins and Pam Melroy, and I mean, I can tell you, those guys are amazing storytellers. I mean, they have great story to tell you. Let's start with that. But they have the passion. Like when you said pilot needs to be, I mean, they're all former pilot, most of them anyway. And it's not just about the story, it's how you tell the story. And I was fascinated by this. I hope you come back again. I think we can talk about other things unrelated to the book. But, you know, sounds to me you have a really big passion for storytelling. So this is the place.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. No, really. And we'll have to meet in real life sometime too, since you're a Southern Californian. Yeah.
Maybe we will meet down in the South Bay. I'll bring my 2 lapels and we'll have a conversation. Why not? That's an idea.
Tell me when.
I'll give you a couple of minutes, the last 2 minutes, just to invite people to read your book. It's your final words for the jury right now.
My final words for the jury. Usually I get to think a little about it.
No. You don't need this. This is your audience. You're not winning or losing a case.
Here's what I'd say that's amazed me. I wrote this book. It was from the heart. But, you know, a lot of people write from the heart and they finish the book and it never gets traditionally published. And when I started this, I learned that, you know, what people do is they put out query letters, and I won't go into that whole thing. We can do that another time if you'd like. But it's a long, arduous project to get a book traditionally published, to get an agent, all of this. So I said, in fact, James Lee Burke says he was rejected 300 plus times. And he's a master of writing. He was rejected by agents 300 plus times. So what I did, I short-circuited, and this is kind of last comment, but also a big hint for those of you out there who are writing books or want to write books. I said, you know, if James Lee Burke was rejected 300 times, I'll never be better than James Lee Burke. Never, ever. It's impossible. I need a shortcut. My shortcut was to finish the manuscript and enter it into the few contests, international contests actually, that allowed unpublished manuscripts to compete against published books, published novels. I entered 5 of them, and in essence, I either won or was a finalist in all 5. That's what these 5 at the bottom are all about here. So I say that because once I started winning these awards for the unpublished manuscript, then getting an agent, getting a traditional publisher to say yes became so much easier. In fact, very easy. And yet, it's what I'd suggest for anybody who's doing it. Put your work out there, see how it bounces against others, make it the best work you can do, and good things can happen.
Yep. And I think this is a great invitation for people to read the book when it comes out. which I believe is June 25th.
June 25th, right?
Wow, good memory I have right here.
That was very good.
So these will definitely be seen and listened before that, but I know you also can pre-order. So whenever you're listening to this, I invite people to do so. There's going to be notes about your website, your social media. People can get in touch with you, and of course, links to the book as well. I want to thank you. I want to thank the audience for listening to us. I hope they had some good time and they learned something and reflect a little bit on storytelling. And yeah, that's what it's all about. Stories, storytelling.
And hopefully they were entertained, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, it is so important.
Entertaining and have more questions now than when they started, because I love people with questions. So that's it. Stay tuned, everybody. Subscribe. There'll be more stories like this. And Ray, thank you so much for being on the show. Take care.
Bye-bye all. Bye-bye.